Engine is in. The motor mount locations seem to be working out really well. We did just simply reuse the Toyota isolator, so those you can just get off the shelf. And our extra inch of space seemed to buy us a lot more room. And I think at the back, if you wanted to retain the vacuum pump, you probably could with a little bit of work to the firewall. I don't know that you'd be able to get it off to replace it, to R&R it, but I think it would fit. I'm possibly going to do that later. I am going to fit it with the vacuum pump delete to start with to make sure that it doesn't leak. And that thing would work, you know, even for guys with the engine still in the Volkswagen. If you're drag racing or something and you want to get rid of that Geroder style pump and get rid of just a little bit of power draw off of there. At the back here, before we added this extra inch of adapter to buy some space, this tube actually was a lot longer, and it split into two. This is the heater core return, and it actually contacted the body right here. So I had cut it off and then reflared it to use, and it'll still work. It is a little hard to get to, but it should still work just fine. The passenger side mount, it's just the block mount to the Toyota isolator, and on the driver's side has our custom-made mount that is a welded-in replacement for the original. The original mount was about here, and this moves it back about 2¼ inches. Again, reuses the Toyota isolator. And that mount, something like that, so that you could simply weld it right to the frame, and it would directly replace the factory mount. So underneath, there is not a huge amount of space between the oil pan and that front axle. And this truck does have a couple 100,000 miles on it, and they are the original front springs. I don't know that would make a lot of difference, but I may have to run a bump stop for now to limit some of that up. We'll cycle it with a forklift and see how close it can really get. I can't go any lower and close the hood and retain that original intake on top, and not everybody has the means to delete that and either cut it off and make a smaller one, or buy the performance one that actually is a little lower. But this truck is also destined for a lift kit. It's actually the rear's up front, so the anti-wrap bar will go away when we weld the axle truss on, and we should have plenty of clearance with those other springs on. But for now, we're just going to drive it with the original springs and see how it all works. So the next part of the process is going to be the heater lines while we can get to them. We'll get the heater lines all sorted out, and then I think while we're waiting for some other parts to be formed, I'm going to start on the wiring. The wiring is done as far as a standalone. You could hook it up to the engine and it would run, but the lengths aren't sorted out yet, so they're still about the length they were in the car. So we'll get those laid on, get them sorted out, and then once the parts are formed for up front, we have an air-to-water intercooler that's going to go in. And this is the little air-to-water charge cooler. So this is, and it is integrated with a air-to-water from Frozen Boost. Radiator fill. For the non-air conditioned trucks, there's probably lots and lots of room for a traditional intercooler up front. I've decided to go with a air-to-water, and that will mount, the little radiator will mount behind the AC, and we're having some stuff formed that will hold that up, and then behind that will go the radiator from the truck, which has our fan shroud, replacement fan shroud, and we have these formed. They match the OEM Toyota radiator, and we just have a 14-inch hole cut in them so that you can mount whatever brand of fan you choose. I went with a Spal 14-inch. I got the highest 3 feet a minute fan I could get, so when we're idling around and somewhere in the desert, it should keep up. It's done. We'll get the radiator in, get the plumbing hooked up, and the last thing to do to make it run would be hooking up the battery. We'll probably set the battery in the original location for now and wire it up to get the engine running and make sure everything works and clears and make sure it starts. Because I have not heard this engine run yet. This is a salvage yard engine. It's an 02 Jetta 1.9. Wiring harness and ECM all came from different years. It's basically was all put together out of eBay and salvage yard. So anyway, that's where we are at. So this is a kind of a sneak preview too. This is cooler. Yeah, this is a V6 truck, ALH motor, and no lift. No lift at all. Stock IFS, modified oil pan, 2-piece plate, 2-piece adapter at the back. Nowhere near ready for the public, but so none of this stuff will likely look like it does now, but it's in the truck so we can fit it. But the hood closes with all the EGR stuff still attached in case you have to retain your emissions control stuff. It does work, but anyway, it's kind of an up and coming project for the next couple of months.